ladies, we're going to have a fancy intro. Tread. All right, we're women that tread. Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Happy Wednesday.
And I'm sure so many of you know who my guest is. I've had her on before. Suha, I think you maybe were my second, or were you my
I
second?
think I was the second.
Yeah. So I love that I'm bringing back, a previous guest because there's always so much to talk about. And especially with you, Suha, like last time I had you on, I think you had just completed a program that with Harvard Business School. You had done something where
Yep.
already I was like, okay, she's an overachiever. And then just recently, last week, didn't you just get your CMP?
And no, I'm actually working towards my AMB,
And
AMP, and
oh
my
yeah,
CMB.
see, I don't know
Yeah,
the
yeah,
acronyms here.
yeah, yeah. I definitely am trying to like kill myself.
Well, that's the thing, as I was like, all right, Suha clearly is, doing all of these things, and I tend to be an overachiever myself. And so I thought, like, let's talk about that because we all, talking about like the hustle and the grind and shred. We have shred that the acronym is
Yeah,
show up, hustle,
well,
repeat every
every
day.
day. Yeah,
So, and
yeah,
so we're in this like hustle culture, right? But we're
yeah.
also at the same time trying to get away with it because we also see that it can be detrimental to our health, right? So it's like, how do we still honor that we are overachievers? Because I think there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, not go crazy.
So I'm going to take it a step back because I think there's a difference between being a high achiever and being
Oh,
an overachiever.
okay.
So overachiever, at least for me, it started when I was very young. I was that fat little kid who always felt left out. And so I always wanted to overcompensate and do more and be more so that I would not feel so inadequate and so insecure, if you will. And so the overachievement started to build from that. Now, honestly, I was not a fat kid and I had tons of friends, but that's how I felt. That was my
Mhm.
perception to me. And so the inadequacy and the that feeling of not being good enough, being insecure, drove me to want to do more. And so, I always strive to be on the honor roll because I had to be the best. I always strive to be, on the dean's list when I was in college because I had to be. And remember, I was very young when I started college. So everybody overlooked me because, well, she was only 15, 16. What does she know? And so I always had to prove myself and prove others wrong. And so I became an overachiever. I accepted a lot of things and I can do it all. I mean, some of the signs or signals that you're an overachiever is that you say yes to everything. You think you
Mhm.
can do it all. No one can do it the way you can. You don't like to delegate and ask other people for help. You're a perfectionist. Like you said, it could be detrimental to you and it could actually lead to burnout, which we've seen happen because you
Mhm.
get into that cycle of, I can't ask for help. I got to do it all. I got to prove myself. That inner critic in your head is going, you don't know what you're talking about. Why should people listen to you? You need to do more to prove who you are.
Mhm.
And so that is a distinction that I think we need to make and make sure that people understand the difference between those two.
Yeah. No, I mean, before I go any further, I do want to say hi to everyone because everyone's like popping in. And I know there were some little bit of the technical issues, but I think people were just copying in, refreshing it. But hello, everyone. Look at all these people hopping in. This is so fantastic.
Hello, everybody.
Well, everybody, let's listen to Suha because you always are very, very insightful. And even the fact that you just described the difference between, high overachiever and overachiever, that in itself, right? Because um, I love how you described why you do it because I was trying to think about it yesterday. I was like, all right, I'm having Suha on. Why do I feel like I have to kind of be a high achiever or essentially an overachiever? And a lot has to do with having to prove myself. I don't know what it is, but I always feel like I do. I've always had kind of a chip on my shoulder in the
Yeah.
sense of like, I always feel like people don't take me seriously or And so a lot of what I do is to kind of prove people wrong. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's like you have to really look deep and be like, why am I doing these things?
Absolutely. And
Which is
being
important.
an overachiever sometimes is really tied to like your own self-respect and self-validation, because that's how, when I accomplish something, then I feel that I'm valuable or that I have self-worth. And when I don't, then I feel like I'm not as worthy. And I think, part of understanding that whole dynamic is knowing and understanding the difference between I need to and I have to
Mhm.
versus I want to and I get to. And they are very, very different. When it's a desire and a need, and you feel like you have to do this, you have to accomplish this, you have to prove yourself. It's very different than this is something fun and I get to do this because I want to. I
Mhm.
want to do this. And having that distinction is really, it helps our mind. We've talked a lot about well-being and, being self-aware, and that triggers all of that, I think.
Yeah. No, it's true. And even for myself now, I'm starting to realize that, like you said, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So I don't feel like I have to necessarily now do these things and prove myself. I love, the marketing, branding, all the stuff that I do with the loan officers, and I have fun with it. And so then at least it's got my mindset has changed, where I think before I really did feel like I had to prove myself, and now I feel like I have proven myself. So now I just kind of have fun with it.
You can sit back and have fun.
Yeah, I think I
Exactly.
can sit back a little bit and be like, you know what? I put in the energy, the work, all of the effort. Hey, Blake,
Hi,
and
Blake.
to now be in a position where I have that confidence now. And for some of us, we don't necessarily get to that point. And the fact that I've gotten to that point, and I have to appreciate it too, right? And so that's that level of appreciation, gratitude as well, cuz gosh, we are so hard on ourselves.
And that's that inner critic. And it, under so we started by what's the difference between being an overachiever and a high achiever, and why do we get that way,
Mhm.
understanding the difference between the want and the have. We also need to know what our triggers are, because we do
Yeah.
have triggers, like you're sitting in a meeting and somebody talks over you, and all of a sudden your inner critic is going, see, I told you, you
Yeah.
don't know what you're talking about. You got to keep proving yourself because they're not listening to you. So we have to know what triggers us to get into that mode, because only when we understand our triggers can we actually start taking steps and see how we can sort of turn it around. So, like for me, one of my triggers is my inner critic, that I have to prove everybody wrong. It's that insecurity and inadequacy, like you're sitting in a room, or you're at a party and nobody's talking to you. You're in a class and nobody's talking to you, or you feel left out. It's all about, I have to accomplish this, I have to prove this, I have to do this. It's almost like you have the pedal to the metal and you just are going like 100 miles an hour, because if you stop, it's all going to fall apart.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you, because clearly you seem to always have something going on. You're always, there's that next thing. So, are you ever going to be satisfied, Suha? Like, or do you know that you're the type of person that you always have to have some kind of goal that in order to kind of motivate you to continue, or do you have kind of that like threshold?
So I did a lot of soul searching this year, because you're right. I mean, if I think about the things that I've been involved in this year, so I started a new consulting practice. I joined the Future Leaders program. I decided to start a coaching certification. I am taking the SOMB, the School of Mortgage Banking classes, because I want to get my AMP designation. I'm involved in the engage mentoring with the MBA. I have my own mentoring clients. I am now involved with Access Lending, and I want to do my CMB. And I had to take a step back and say, you know what? I can't do all this. It's going to kill me if I do all this. I have to have time for my family. I have to have time for my husband. I have to have time for myself. And
Yeah.
so So yes, I do have goals, but I'm trying to be a little bit more realistic about the situation that I'm in. And I learned something new that I'm going to share it with everybody here. It's called the GROW methodology, GROW.
Okay.
You have to set your goals. That's the G. You have to know what your reality is. What is happening right now? What's the situation that you're in? Why are you setting these goals? And can you get these goals accomplished? The O is for your options. What can you let go of? What can you say no to? What can you actually say yes to? Because remember, I think we talked about this last time. Whatever you're saying yes to, you're saying no to something else. And understanding that difference in our mind is, what am I saying no to when I say yes to this other thing? And then the last thing is the W, which is your will. Are you willing to do what needs to happen? Do you have the strength, and do you have the ability to say, I'm not going to do this right now because it's not the right time for me? Or I understand that this is a goal I have, but I need to shelve it for a while. So again, GROW, goal, reality, options, and will. It has really transformed how I think about things.
Wow. No, I love it, because you clearly are, there's a lot of people out there that are like really listening to what you have to say. And I love that. Now, does she go by Alex? Alexandra Rosada?
Alexandra, yeah.
Does she go by Alex or Alexandra? Or you don't?
Alexandra.
Alexandra. Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put her comment up really quickly. So apparently you really spoke to her. She was also the chubby kid who knew they had to be better than everyone at everything else to make up for it. I learned this about myself a long time ago, always trying to make up for that area that I thought I lacked in. Yeah, it's like filling that void, right? It's like where you lack that void. But it's interesting because right before I got on this live, I was on a podcast and we were talking about our youth, and it all comes down to our childhood and to how, things that happen as we were a kid and how that affects us, and that sits with us. And we were just discussing how a lot we need to kind of change as a child so that we don't grow up as adults and then experiencing these type of things where we feel like we have to be an overachiever in order to feel worthy. So it's difficult, right? To
It
like
is.
even
But think back to when you were a child, Raquel. When we're between the ages of 2 and 5, we're fearless. We can do anything. We're ready to jump. Our parents put us on a leash, for God's sake, because they're afraid we're going to run away.
Yeah.
But then at some point, and it really is, it's very curious that a lot of times it happens when we start school, when we start to socialize in a school environment, that we start to see those changes, where that insecurity starts to build in, where that feeling of inadequacy starts to build in. It's gotten a lot better, I think, in schools. But I remember when I was young, for me, that's really when it started. Because, before that, I was ready to go. God, I would talk a mile a minute. My parents would pay me money to stop talking. Honest to God. My mom would say, here's a quarter. Just shut up for a half an hour. Give us a break.
Yeah.
So, it's very interesting, the dynamics that happen there. But as we grow, I saw, I don't know who it is. There's a Facebook user that said, how can you avoid?
So Maria Rouse, who is one of my LinkedIn connections, she had to hop over to Facebook because apparently there were some difficulties there. But yeah, so she's the one that's chiming in.
Yeah, she's asking, how can you avoid having to prove yourself all the time?
Yeah.
And that's a very difficult thing. But again, it comes back from self-awareness and acceptance. Knowing what you're capable of and knowing the value that you bring. We all have value. Don't let somebody else determine what your value is. You know what your value is. You know what you bring in. And when you get that awareness, when you start to accept that about yourself and say, hey, you know what? No, they're wrong. That's not right. When somebody speaks over you, you need to, I understand that you have something to say, but can I finish my point first? So there are delicate ways that you can handle it, but it really comes down to self-awareness and self-acceptance and knowing what value you bring. When you know that, then nobody can actually put you down, I think.
Well, how about for those that don't really know their value yet and they're kind of struggling with that? Like, do you have kind of ways to get to that point where you do?
I mean, honestly, one of the things that I would suggest is if you don't have a mentor, find a mentor. Work with somebody who's maybe a couple of years ahead of you in the industry that you're in. You know, we're all in mortgage lending, so maybe find somebody who's at your company or otherwise. You know, not at your company, but within the industry, because having that perspective, having that validation, that, you know, sort of kind of helping you map it out and understand where you're good and where you're not so good is
Mhm.
great. I'm actually, are we allowed to add comments in here, or do we not add
I think you might
comments?
have to do it from your phone. I don't, because I
Okay,
don't
because
do
I
it to
want to share
computer.
this with the audience. I
You know
think
what,
they should
Dell or
all.
Josh can, if you in the
All
private
right, so
chat.
I'm gonna send it to Dell, and then Dell, if you can put it in the comments for the audience. This is a self-assessment that helps you identify what your saboteurs are. Whether
Mm.
you are a high achiever, whether you are a stickler, whether you are a control
It's
person. It's I mean it's very it takes about 5-10 minutes. It's about 50 questions, but they're really quick, and you need to answer them without thinking a lot about which way I am. You don't want to think of it as, you know, how am I at work versus how am I in my personal life. You want to just answer the questions. It will send you your report and it'll show you your score. I think it's like 15 different characteristics of what
Mm.
your saboteurs are, what's holding you back. That's a great way to start, because that gives you insight about who you are. You know, ask me, how can they help themselves? That would be one of the things that I would do. There's also, last week at SOMB2, one of the girls with us was talking about the anxiety, anxious level. There's an assessment that tells you where you are on the anxious
Oh,
like level state,
yeah.
and that was very eye-opening for me as well. So there's a couple of assessments that you can take that sort of give you some insights. A great thing to do, like I said, is work with a mentor. Find somebody that you can actually relate to and that can help you. Having a tight-knit of group of friends that you can actually, I call them your board of directors. You know, somebody who's there to cheer you on, somebody who's there to give you the right, you know, tell it to you like it is. There's like 5 different roles in that, and I'm happy to share it with others. It's part of my fear advantage that I actually you know, provide and do. And there are certain things that you can do. There's a lot of opportunities where you can take this overachievement and turn it into a positive thing that helps you be more successful. You know, again, self-awareness of what triggers you have is really, really great. Setting
Yeah.
boundaries, knowing what to say yes to and knowing what to say no to. And that's a personal thing. You know,
Yeah.
it's something that you have to decide. You know, we were talking about putting your foot, you know, your foot on the pedal to the metal and going at 100 miles. Ask yourself, what happens if I take my foot off the pedal? What's going to happen? Is
Yeah.
the car going to stop, like come to a screeching stop? Am I going to be able to maintain, or what's going to happen? Because that's a discovery, that's a conversation you should be having with yourself.
Yeah. I think
Um,
we need to be having conversations with ourselves a lot more.
yeah. And again, you know, learn to say no or not now. You know, there's nothing wrong for you to tell somebody, you know what, I'd love to help you with this, but I can't. I had a Meg, you know, Meg Bennett. One of the things that she struggled with is she's like, I'm on this board and I'm on this committee and I'm on this. And she says yes to everything. And she realized at one point that she is so stretched thin that she doesn't have time for herself and for her family. Again, it's a sign of an overachiever where you want to be helpful. It's not necessarily that you want to be a pleaser, but you want to come across to people that you're there for them. And it's
Yeah.
great to be there for them, but not at your own expense. And
Yeah.
that's the distinction that we need to understand, really.
No, I mean, absolutely. Because that's something that just as of recently, I've gotten better with the boundaries and really honoring what I need. And before, I would be really concerned about how that other person would take it and if they would be upset with me or disappointed. And then I realized, you know, because if you think about it, if you ask people to do something, they say no, you're kind of like, oh, well, that sucked. And then I feel like you kind of just move on. I mean, at least that's how I am. So I
Yeah.
don't like dwell on how on them. So it's like I have to remind myself, like me saying no to this person or to this thing and having a legit reason for it, like they don't, that's all they need. And they're going to
Yeah.
move on and live with their lives because they're concerned about themselves too. Like I think once again, we're we're so self-absorbed that we forget that everybody else is self-absorbed too.
Yep.
Really when we think that they're like focused on us, no, they usually aren't. So
Yeah.
that's another thing I have to remind myself, that it's like, Raquel, you're not that like
Well, I mean,
important.
you are the center of the universe, Raquel. I mean, let's all be clear here. Raquel is the center of the universe. But yes, I agree.
Yeah, you have to remind yourself, like, we're not the center of the universe, like
Yeah. I
and
mean,
I
another, absolutely. And I think another thing that we could do as we're going through this journey, because it is a journey, it's a journey of self-discovery, it's a journey of self-acceptance, is redefine, what does success mean to us?
yeah.
When I was in my 20s, success was very different than what it means to me today. What I wanted when I was in my 30s is very different than what I want today. And so knowing what success means to you is really vital for you to be successful. Because if you're still doing what you thought you wanted back when you were in your 20s and 30s, that's not serving you at all. So you need to have these conversations and really, whether it's making a vision board or, writing down, whatever it is that helps you get that clarity, it's vital for your success, I think.
Yeah. Maria is like a huge fan of yours now. So Maria, you have to follow Suha. Like, so Suha and I have known each other for years now. We've met in person. We're actual friends.
We
And so
lived like 5 miles from each other
I
when we
know we
first
live
met.
super close to each other. And so I love, this is what's so cool about the show is Maria's not in the industry. Christina isn't either. And so I love that we get people hopping in on the show because this is relatable to anybody and everyone in any industry. And the fact that Maria is getting a bunch of insight from you, this is like what it's all about. So I'm like super excited that Maria just had the opportunity to find out who Suha is.
I'm happy to meet you, Maria. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like glancing at the comments, and I'm loving what I'm seeing
How come
there.
we just recently know of you? Where have you been all this time? Yeah, Maria's in San Francisco, right, Maria? In Northern California. I'm pretty sure that's where she is. I haven't met her yet either. But I wanted to bring up, because when you were rattling off all your things, you didn't talk about Chief. And I want to know,
Oh yeah.
so you're a part of this group, Chief. Now, are you learning a lot from that particular group too? Because those are those women are like, woo, top of their game and they're up there. So I'm curious, like, are you getting like all this really cool leadership
So the
insight?
assessment that I shared, we
Yeah.
actually did it so we have what we call a core group. So as part of
Okay.
CHIEF, they put you into groups of 8 to 10 executive women. And so like, again, you create your own board of directors. And so
Yeah.
we're going through this 1-year journey together. We meet once a month and we have certain topics that we talk about. And this assessment was actually an assessment that we did at our last meeting. It shouldn't surprise everyone. Even top level executive women struggle with the same things that we do.
Yeah.
That you and I do. They have the same insecurities. They feel the same inadequacies. They struggle with the same challenges. And it's not just women. I mean, even men do the same. It's a universal issue that we all feel, that we have to be on the go, go, go. We go back to social media. You look on somebody's social media. Oh, look how happy they are. Oh, look, they're traveling. Oh, look, they're doing this. They must have such a fabulous life. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. We just see what's in front of us and we assume that that's all what's going on. And so it's always, when we have these insecurities and inadequacies, we need to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah. And that we're not alone. We're not the only ones.
We're not the only ones who are going through this.
Yeah, because that was something that I was, so my daughter is a freshman at University of Arizona and she's struggling a little bit. She's homesick, Virginia, she's from Virginia, here she's in Arizona. It's very different. And it wasn't until that she found a couple of her peers and sorority sisters that were like, are you kidding me? We're struggling with the exact same thing. And then she's finding out more and more other, girls in her sorority and just at school are feeling the same thing and having the same insecurities and are having a tough time meeting people. And it wasn't until she found out that she wasn't alone, by speaking with her peers, because my ex and I could I mean, obviously we were trying to give her advice and tell her that she's not the only one, but it wasn't until she actually spoke with her peers and realized that she wasn't, that it actually changed the way she was thinking and her attitude. And I think that's what's so important, is that it's key to surround yourself with people that are experiencing the same thing, not so that you can like commiserate, right? Because that
Yeah,
saying, misery loves company. There's a difference.
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
But it wasn't until just in the last couple of days that now she feels better. And I was like, thank goodness she realized, like, finally that she's not alone. And now, I'm sure there's many people listening to this realizing, oh my gosh, like here's someone like Suha that's having the same kind of insecurities that I do. And it's I think this is really good. This is like exactly what we needed to hear today. At least I did.
It's it really does surprise me when when I hear, because all of this, I mean, again, we start talking about mental well-being and mental health. It starts at these kind of things, and then it triggers down where it becomes really an issue. And again, I go back to know what your triggers are and start preparing so that when this happens, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Or if I'm faced with this situation, this is what my response is going to be. So that
Yeah.
you're not blindsided and you're not like a deer caught in the headlight and not knowing what to do. And then all of a sudden it just piles up and piles up, because I was one of those people that just pushed everything under the rug. And
Me
I would
too.
just keep doing, what I'm doing. Hey, if I had to work 20 hours a day, I'll work 20 hours a day. And I just kept pushing it under the rug, pushing it under the rug. And eventually it gets to be very problematic for you. And you start to have more, whether it's medical health issues, issues with your, significant other, with your friends, whatever it is. So knowing that this is something we need to address, and this is something that I need to be aware of, that I'm that type of personality. So I need to be aware and know what my triggers are so that I can stop myself, having that self-awareness.
Yeah. I love that Maria just said sometimes it's cultural. There's a stigma of putting a brave front, and that is so true.
Middle Eastern.
I was
Yes,
gonna say
absolutely.
that more than
Absolutely.
I do as a Hispanic.
Absolutely. Yep. There's a whole big cultural stigma around it. And yep, you have to put up a front and you have to be, everything's okay. Nobody should know what's going on. I mean, when I started to post stuff on LinkedIn, I'm not as active on Facebook, but when I started to post things on LinkedIn, some of my family is actually connected to me on LinkedIn, and they're like, "How can you say that? You should not be talking about this. Why are you talking about that? This is private. This is family. This is blah blah." And it's like, no, I mean, this is authentically who I am. I'm struggling today, or I'm feeling really great today, and I want the world to know. When people see that, it becomes, they have that self-awareness that they also have the same struggles as somebody like Raquel or Suha or whoever.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We need to be more open and willing to share so that our younger generations, because I'm incredibly passionate about our kids and about helping them. And I feel like the only way that we can do is we have to change a little bit of the way we communicate and what we share. And I think as adults, if we're willing to be so open and vulnerable and say, hey, I'm 47 and I still struggle with these things, and I have my insecurities and I still make mistakes, and I try to, be the best person I possibly can be. But sometimes, situations occur where, I might have made a bad
Bad
choice
decision. Yep.
or a bad decision, and it's okay. It's part of life. And I feel like we have to be talking this way so that our younger generations don't feel the pressure of having to be perfect because of, because I think there is also a lot of us out there that are still painting everything to be like, oh, I'm such a huge success and I'm perfect, and I've got the cars and the homes. And I just feel like the more of us that are willing to expose, the
Peel
iron,
the onion back, or
yeah,
pull
like
back the
the
curtain.
Oz, right?
Yeah.
Like the behind the curtain. I think that it's going to be better for everybody.
I
Not
think so.
just our peers,
Absolutely.
but our kids.
Absolutely. Because I mean, I think when we show that we can be vulnerable and still be successful, when we show that we can, that we accept the struggles that we have and that we are finding opportunities to grow and improve ourselves, that triggers down to that next generation and to the next one, that they see it's okay to have that, and you can still be successful because you are working on yourself. We're all a work in progress.
Oh
Don't, I
yeah,
mean, God, nobody's perfect. We're all a work in progress.
yeah. Suha, okay, I think that was probably the fastest show that I've done, where I was just like, wait, we're already at 30 minutes? Like, that was just crazy. Oh my gosh, holy smokes. Okay, so any of you that are not connected with Suha, you can connect with her on LinkedIn. You're on Facebook. You're on Instagram too, right? But
Yep.
definitely connect with Suha. She's obviously a wealth of knowledge, and obviously like an incredible woman who has so much
Aw.
to offer. So I always feel so blessed to be able to call you, a friend, and so I feel like everybody, I'll share you.
Aw. Well,
Yeah,
I heart you so much, Raquel.
me too. All right, Suha. Well, thanks again, and I'll have you on again at some point because, like I said, you always have so much incredible insight.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you to everyone for showing up, and we'll see you again next Wednesday for Women That Shred. Bye, everyone.